Hello, everyone. This is Mike and Drew with East Coast Horror Group. We're here with Gary Streiner of FixTheChapel.com. How are you, Gary?
I'm very good, guys. How are you?
Good, Gary. Thanks for asking.
All right. So, we're obviously here to talk about, Fix the Chapel in Evans City, one of the staples of the Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. So, what brought your attention to really fixing this chapel? What came about?
Well, it actually came about in 2008 when I started a little thing called the Living Dead Festival, and I was trying to get something going. It was the 40th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead. A guy by the name of Rick Reifenstein, who's an Evans City resident, approached me and said that the Historical Society had like to do something for the 40th anniversary, and so I was up for that, and I hadn't really been deeply into any of the Night of the Living Dead activities. I mean, all the rest of the guys, because I left town, I was living in New York. I lived all over the country, but so I came back, moved back to, I have a piece of property here in Evans City, and so I moved back, and so the timing was right, and I started, nosing around, seeing what was available, what was going on. Of course, I'm trying to have a festival. I didn't know exactly where I would have it. One of the thoughts was, maybe I can have it up in the cemetery, and I got to know Ron Colts a little bit, and who's the chairman of the cemetery committee. And they weren't real keen on the idea. They were really actually kind of afraid of Night of the Living Dead fans.
Oh, really?
It's a small town, and it was like all of a sudden, you're going to bring all kind of attention to the cemetery. We're going to get all these freaks in from all over the country, and they're going to come up and desecrate the cemetery, and it was very difficult because I didn't know him. I had just met him, and it was kind of difficult for me to convince him that would never be the case, and that that the people of Night of the Living Dead revere this place, and that it was never desecrated. And but anyway, so there was that little barrier. But at that point in time, he said, he mentioned that so this is in 2008. He mentioned that the chapel was going to be torn down, and I said, well, that can't be. I mean, you can't tear it down, and go back and forth, and I at that point in time I said, well, you got to at least give me a chance to try to save it, and but that sort of went by the board. Everything sort of washed. I ended up having the the Living Dead Fest, despite his concerns, and we had a great turnout. We had a really great event. We did it in a little park in Evans City, and so based on that first year, I did it again the next year, and of course the crowd grew. It got a little bit bigger, and we had a record amount of cast and crew members from Night of the Living Dead. I think we had a total of 17, which that's the most that have ever been gathered at any one point in time. But, I was more focused on that. I was more focused on trying to create an event and trying to create an environment that people could come and get real information about Night of the Living Dead. I mean, such a play. I mean, there's no real Night of the Living Dead website. There's no real Night of the Living Dead forum. There are tons of fragmented ones, but none just relating to Night of the Living Dead. So that's kind of where my focus went. And then I decided to take a year off. I wasn't going to do anything big. That would have been in 2010. But I wasn't going to do anything big for the festival. We just had a screening up here at a local Strand Theater in Zillionople. And so then all of a sudden it started kicking back up. Well, what am I going to do for 2011? And I decided again that, you know, probably we wouldn't have the festival again in 2011, but I would start to put something together to have an active role in saving the chapel. I also kind of simultaneously started hearing very serious rumors now that it was going to come down, because all they were using it for was basically storing their lawn tractors and their maintenance equipment for the caretakers for the cemetery. It really just using the basement, nothing else was going on. It was slowly deteriorating, falling apart. They got to the point where they couldn't get their mowers in it anymore because they were getting wider and wider, you know, cutting blades and that kind of stuff. So it was like they were really just waiting for somebody that they knew that had a bulldozer available, and they were going to knock it down. So simultaneously with that, I had a Facebook page, the Living Dead Festival Facebook page, that I hadn't been paying any attention to it. It was just sitting there, and somebody sent me an email, a personal email, and said, hey, you know, what's going on? We just want to know what's going on. Are you going to have the festival, or you're not going to have the festival? And, you know, there's been a lot of people over at the Living Dead Fest group asking the same question. It's like, okay, I rush over there, and all of a sudden there's all these people wondering what's going on. And I just kind of said it. I said, you know, well, that's it. This year I'm going to, you know, turn my efforts toward, this is in like early September. I said I'm not going to do a festival. I'm going to turn my efforts to saving the chapel. And then within about 15 minutes, somebody responds, and they said, well, if you want to get into the meeting, it's happening on the 27th of September, and, you know, my mother-in-law is a member of the board, so if you want in, you're in. It was like, okay, here we go. So there was, you know, this big anticipation for the rest of the month. So we got to the 27th, and, you know, by that time, the Facebook group started to grow a little bit, you know, and, you know, people all of a sudden were catching on and interested in the idea that, you know, this could happen, and just becoming more and more aware, sort of nationally, that there was a chance that it could be torn down. So the support was really kind of very quick and very great. I'd say by the time we got to the 27th, I'd say in a period of about 10 or 15 days, you know, we grew from 220 people to about 675 people.
Wow.
And so I was like, wow, maybe, you know, maybe we can do this, maybe we'll. So I went into the meeting on the 27th, and, you know, they couldn't have been, you know, more reasonable. You know, they don't want to tear it down. They just physically don't have the money to fix it, nor did they have really a concept of how they could use it or what they would use it for. So the meeting went really, really well, and I was able to come back and, you know, all right, raise the flag, we're going to save the chapel. And it's just been, you know, literally from that point on, it's just been growing and growing and growing until, I guess now we're pretty close to 2,500 members, you know, which is pretty remarkable, being that it's not the horror genre, it's just Night of the Living Dead. And, you know, so the outpour has just been somewhat overwhelming to me. You know, I mean, I knew it in the back of my mind because I had this idea back even in you know, in '08, but I just never really thought that it could or would come to fruition. And now all of a sudden, here it is.
I was just curious. You said that, you know, for the first kind of Night of the Living Dead, I don't want to say reunion, but the festival there, you had a great response from the cast from the original one. I was just curious, any other celebrities, maybe whether it be from Night of the Living Dead or just from the genre, just from the genre itself, looking back, I know a lot of the celebrities that are writing now, making horror movies, take liberties from Night of the Living Dead. Everyone now does. Zombies are completely mainstream now. You see it in television and movies. Has anybody else come out of the woodwork to kind of help you promote this and, donated and help you got this off the ground?
I wouldn't say there's a an overwhelming. I think the thing that everybody has to understand is that most of these people have, really complicated, packed lives. I happen to be really fortunate to be able to be involved in this because I'm retired. I should say I'm semi-retired. So I'm not active. I'm not working on projects. I think if you knew even someone like my brother or Jack Russo, or George certainly, how much time their time is just taken up with current projects they're working on. It's a full-time job. So, I mean, they're all behind it. The greatest one is, the kind outside of Night of the Living Dead, is Greg Nicotero, who was very gracious. There's a blog called the Walking Dead blog, I think, and or the Walking Dead pod. It's a podcast that they do out of San Francisco with by Sean and Karen, and Karen had sent me an email asking if I wanted to, come on the show and talk about the chapel, and she said we just had Greg on he was our guest last week, and so I go over and I check it out, and there's all of a sudden here's Greg Nicotero just saying, got to get behind this, can't let this happen, this is like a really sacred place,
Really?
But it's almost by accident that I even found that, I mean, if somehow there just wasn't that connection and she hadn't gotten in touch with me, I might never have seen that podcast or rather heard that podcast. So while the whole social networking, social media, podcasting, blogging, while it's amazingly comprehensive in the ground that it can cover, it's also riddled with so much information. The fact that we've been able to cut through that all and get major articles in the Post-Gazette and in Rue Morgue and Horror Hound and soon to come out one in Fangoria. I mean, these are all, I guess, examples of what you're talking about. These are the people who are stepping up. These people care about it. If they hear about it, they usually will do something about it. We must have, been given donated tables at now 15 different spring conventions. Cinema Wasteland is really embracing this whole thing, and they're going to do a lot for us. But I think that's kind of the way it happens. It's a big question, and it's like everybody, we've had controversy in the Facebook group saying, well, George is a rich man, why doesn't he just put the cash up and fix it and be done? Well, that's just not the way life works, right. That's not it. So while I don't think there's anyone that's against this effort, to directly answer your question, I don't know that everybody just has the time. I mean, I had probably a 15-minute conversation with Greg, and he's going to do something, but it's all kind of like a matter of timing. Who knows what it will be? I'm sure something very creative is going to come up, and all of a sudden there's going to be an auction, or there's going to be something, or and he's, of course, in the meantime, he's been chatting this thing up since for probably the last month. So in the circles that he travels in, you never know where it's going to pop up. I mean, all of a sudden, Tarantino could, come in and say, "All right, here's your $50,000." I mean, but that's unlikely. And you know what? Maybe if I focused more on that and I focused more on trying to get celebrity support, more would happen. But I'm having such fun dealing with these fans, and I'm having it's just such a wonderful experience to see all the people, all the fans of Night of the Living Dead want to rally around this cause and get it done. And I almost think if all of a sudden, you know, if somebody waved the magic wand and we didn't have this fundraiser, there'd just be like this emptiness in all these fans' lives, you know? As silly as that may sound. So, I mean, I've had grant writers approach me and talk to me about, you know, man, we can get this corporation and that. And I don't, that, to me, in a real weird sort of way, and I might live to regret this, and I may live to, like, swallow my tongue and go begging, but I just consider it like dirty money, you know? It's
right,
like,
I hear you.
I mean, those people don't give a shit about Night of the Living Dead. They don't care about the cemetery. All they care about is connecting their name to something that's popular, you know? And I'm really hesitant to go down that road, you know? I mean, George was really very gracious and wrote a wonderful little piece about sort of his connection to Evans City and the chapel. You know, my brother and Kyra has been enormously present in the group. You know, my brother's come out to events we've had. He's, you know, we're about to. We just created a new poster for, you know, specifically for the Hollywood screening, and we just needed some new art. We needed something new to sell, and so we created a poster for the event. And then, you know, we're gonna make a version of that same poster that's you know, that's a more generic one that we can sell on the website and sell at conventions and things like that. And this is kind of the, you know, people can either just donate money or they can buy something. Well, any idiot would just buy something, you know?
Right, yeah.
So part of the mission of the group is to continually, you know, come up with things that people might want to buy. The whole idea of the screening at the Hollywood is just riding on the coattails of the whole notion that somebody came up with. I don't even know who exactly. You guys might. I don't know who came up with the idea to get 1 million people to screen Night of the Living Dead on George's birthday. But that's what this is about. This is the Pittsburgh contingent theoretically going, and this is the screening we're putting forward for not only that, but our cause. So, you know, we're going to bring out new wristbands at that show. This poster will finally come out and be out, and I'm certain that off of the poster, you know, we'll also get off T-shirts and all sorts of other kind of merch. But anyway, it just feels good. It feels good because this new poster was done by a guy named Matt Orsman, and you know, Matt's a professional. He's a cartoonist and he's a graphic designer, and that's what he does for a living. And he comes home at night and he does this out of pure love for Night of the Living Dead. You know, yes, there's no question that. Anybody that attaches themselves to this attaches themselves to the popularity of it. You know, right now in a very small vein, in a very, you know, kind of narrow band genre, it's pretty hot news right now. I mean, you don't get in the top 3 horror magazines in the country and probably the world, you know, if you don't have anything to say.
You know, it's kind of nice to hear that, you know, corporations could help and stars can help, but really, you know, how we feel about it, anywhere we go, any conventions that we, you know, cover, and as soon as we say we're from Pittsburgh, immediately Night of the Living Dead is brought up. And you know, George, and I know you were the sound engineer on Night of the Living Dead. Your brother Russ, you know, had the famous line, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." You guys didn't use a ton of money to make this film. You didn't have any corporate sponsors. You were rogue filmmakers, and I really think that.
And you know what? I mean, I think subconsciously that's in the back of my mind throughout this whole thing. And the truth of it is, I mean, it's almost like I keep saying, "Oh man, we could have 5 new T-shirts if I just went out and got sponsorship."
Right.
But you know what? I go out and get sponsorship, and I'd have to have their stinking logo stuck on it somewhere, you know. And every time I'd look at that shirt, it'd make my stomach turn. And that basically comes off of the fact that if somehow Night of the Living Dead would have been in any way connected to being a studio film, it wouldn't be the cult classic that it is right now. They would just never allowed it to be what it became. Right. It's a total fluke. It's a fluke of business, you know, and therefore it does get the title of, you know, probably the most successful independent film ever made, or certainly up there, certainly in the horror realm it is.
So let's get back a little bit to the Hollywood theater. You know, we're going to be, you've graciously let us, you know, kind of cover what's going on at this event. Give us sort of the lineup. Are there anyone from the film going to be there? And
well, you know, who knows? I can't really say. I mean, I know that Russ is trying to get there, my brother Russ.
Right.
I know that Ellen Mae Smith, who's the only surviving Evans City Ghoul, is we just confirmed today that she's going to be there. But I don't want this to be on them either. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of, I mean, if they step up and they do it, then I'm really graciously accept them and love it dearly. I just don't want to keep coming back to these people over and over and over and over again, because I could do it. I could literally be asking them to do something every week. And I want the fans again to understand that this is not their responsibility, nor is this their mission. This is something that this group has taken on to do, and we should be able to live off of that energy. I want this to be the fans' show. You know, I want this to be, you know, they're the celebrities in the whole thing. You know, they're the ones with all the artistic ability. They're the ones. Terry Cowan, who did our first poster and T-shirt, is become a very near dear friend. That's another thing I would say. There's not been one event that I haven't come out of with at least 2 or 3 life friends that are, you know, now when can you say, I've probably, since I started doing this in 2008, I've probably 30. I have 30 life friends out of this. This is what matters to me, you know. Right. These people, you know, there's a guy, Will Bozarth, who's coming up from, I think it's actually is New Jersey, but over there, Will is, he was at the second festival. He didn't make the first one because he didn't know about it, but he made the second one, and he's a life friend. I mean, I went and drove to Philadelphia, you know, to see his band, whose name is Goddamn Zombie, do their first show ever, you know, and so I drove 360 miles to see 30 people, you know, in a recording studio, you know, and it has soul, and it has personality, and it has texture, and this is what I care about. And so, I mean, so everything that I'm kind of involved with goes that way, you know, and, you know, and then I, you know, I start thinking, well, you know, the fans do definitely like to meet the people that were in the film, and So I thought, okay, well, we'll get a few to come to the Hollywood. So I'm not done yet. We'll see who all shows up. But we're doing another one. There's another one too in Oakmont on the 11th.
Oh, okay.
Which is on Valentine's. It's a Valentine's called Your Heart Out Zombie Party, and that's on our Facebook page too, and it's on our website, on our rather crude calendar on our website, which is www.fixthechapel.com. But there's all kinds of stuff there too for people to go and help. They can donate. They can see what's going on. I don't know if any of you have ever run a website. It's a very difficult thing to. I mean, it's a full-time job. So I think we've put a pretty respectable presentation on all fronts together. We don't sell crap. We don't generate, sort of press-on T-shirts. Everything we do is quality, and that just makes me feel good when somebody gets a T-shirt and goes, "Wow, this thing is really great."
Cool. Yeah. So, just how much exactly are you trying to raise, and how close are you to the goal right now?
We're right in around $13,000 that we've raised. Which, think about that. Imagine if you were to try to go out and get money together, what it would take to get $13,000.
Right, yeah,
and we've done that in about 3 months, a little over 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe I'll go generously to 3.5 months. We've got a bunch of we have a bunch of people working on kind of figuring out how we're going to save this thing, what the most economical way to do it is. I have an engineer working on it who's got an architectural department in his engineering firm that are doing drawings, working on drawings, and working on kind of putting the whole skeleton of this thing, re-putting it together, because none of the drawings existed from back in 1923 when it was built, or certainly that we've been able to turn up. I have a historical archaeologist from Monmouth College in New Jersey who is in March going to be out here, and his whole point is the first. He's going to do two things. The number one thing he's going to do is get all the paperwork and everything in order to try to get this building on a national register, or at least a national marker, which protects it and saves it forever. Right. And that, I mean, if it were just the chapel, that could never happen. It wouldn't qualify. The fact that Night of the Living Dead was shot there is its only chance of making that register. He heads up a division there that basically they do virtual renderings, and I mean he's gonna do a virtual rendering of the whole cemetery. So you're going to be able to, at some point in time, go online and take a virtual tour of the cemetery and the chapel from anywhere in the world.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be, well, we'll see what it's going to be. Yeah. He's also said that if we can provide him with enough information, and he thinks he could probably do it off of between the film and between what photographs we have, to be able to recreate the house, which of course was torn down right after we finished shooting. So he's going to be able to do a virtual tour of the house at some point in time as well. So there's all these kinds of things happening. I just met with a contractor 2 days ago at the cemetery and he's from the area. He knew the chapel. He got in touch with me saying, I think we can do you some real good here. I really like the guy. We'll see how that pans out. I don't have an actual ultimate number. We're using 50,000 as a benchmark. I'm hoping we don't have to get that far. But if we do, we'll keep marching. You know, I don't think it'll ever stop. Every time I think it's stopping, there's all of a sudden there's like this big gush of, you know, people that you know, come up with really generous donations and buy bunches of T-shirts and all that sort of stuff. So right now, like I said, we have a couple of big fundraisers that we haven't brought out yet. We're going to sell memorial bricks and memorial stones.
Oh, okay.
And that's going to raise a lot of money because they'll be different. This will be the way sort of the conventions and you know, horror magazines and things like that can pony up some bucks. You know, I don't want this only, again, like I sort of said in the beginning, I don't want this be some elitist kind of thing. A guy sent me $3.67. And I swear, I don't think there's been a donation yet that has impacted me as much as that. Because, like, wait a minute, he could have made it $3.50, you know, but no, he had the extra, but he didn't have enough to go to $3.75 or $4.
Right.
You know, and to me, that's the coolest thing of all. You give what you can, you know, and I don't know, I have no idea. This kid could have been 12 years old, but I don't care. It doesn't matter, you know.
Right.
He could give $3.67, and that's what he gave, you know. So there's a ton, 100 of those. We are also doing a documentary, which I would love to be able to use some of your footage from you know, over the weekend, if that's possible.
Oh yeah, that's no problem at all.
Would you be able to? We got a guy, Joe Barbarisi, who actually was here. He's from New Jersey, and he was here for 3 months and documented a lot. And he had to go back home, but
right.
So he's not going to be able to be here for the event. But
okay.
It'd be nice to get some footage to use in the documentary. So that's another thing that will continue the legacy.
Right.
People have asked me, well, why this? Why are you doing this? And I had to think about it for a long time before it all finally formalized in my head. But today's fans are extremely lucky because there are so many of the cast and crew that are still around. George Romero's still around. And these guys make themselves readily available at conventions all the time. So today's fans, you know, have a lot of access to Night of the Living Dead. But, you know, we're all getting up there, and there's going to come a day when we're not able to make it or not around to make it, and the only thing that's going to be left is this chapel, and and obviously the cemetery and the gravestones that were in the film, but that's a pretty major part. I mean, that's what people are going to have from Night of the Living Dead, that they can make their pilgrimages, and they do. I'm pretty much batting 1,000. I have not been up at the cemetery when there hasn't been a Night of the Living Dead fan there.
That's just awesome. That just shows how deep this film runs with the horror fan. You know.
Yeah. And they're not 50 and 60-year-olds. You know, these are young people, and you know, the first clue is you see a car come up and it's got Michigan plates on it. You know,
right.
And it's like, and I do it every time. And I'll just walk over to them and I'll say, "I bet you're not a Living Dead fan." And they'll go, "Wow." And then it's like, "Yeah, well, I'm Gary Streiner. I was the sound man on the film." And it's like, "Get out of here!" You know, it's like made their life come true. But yeah, they made the pilgrimages. They come here, and they hit the cemetery and they hit Monroeville Mall, and
Right.
you know, and that's hey, that's their fix. You know, that's they've been watching this thing for years. You know, and now all of a sudden they can stand there right where it was made. It's kind of like an out of body experience for a lot of people.
So with the fundraiser, do you have a deadline at all that you're trying to meet, or is Evans City?
Well, in the meeting, they asked me how long I needed, and that's what I was really paranoid about. I thought they were going to say, okay, well, you know, you got 4 months, but they said a year. You know, yeah, technically we have a year, so end of September. Now I think that's very subjective. I think that number one, I'm hoping by September that we're pretty much near done with the renovation. I really do. I'm really hoping that through the spring, through the spring shows, as I said, a couple of other fundraisers that we have in mind. I'm hoping we have enough funds to really get rolling on this thing this summer, and I will know more about that. I kind of said that by the time the spring conventions are over, we should pretty much have a plan of attack of when the things can be done.
We're working with a website from Dusk Till Con, and also the promoters of Days of the Dead, that it's going to be in Atlanta, Chicago, and Indianapolis. Give us a list, if you can, of the shows that you're going to attend for our fans, so they can stop by and see the table and make a donation.
Boy, it's tough for me to do right now.
Okay.
Just off the top of my head, but if they go to our Facebook page,
okay,
or group, which they can get to through the Living Dead Festival or Save the Chapel groups at Facebook.com.
Okay.
Up in the docs, there's a list. Derek Reed does a group called Horror Conventions. He really does a phenomenal job. So he's created a doc up there that tells you, kind of lists all the shows that are coming up. We do have, I know we have the Atlanta show. I know Will Bozarth actually is going to be there and cut the table. But anyway, they're listed there, and it says who's gonna support them. So yeah, if you just send people to the who's covering what convention document on our group.
Okay, not a problem. We'll get people there. Again, we really thank you for your time, Gary, and again, just we'll send people to fixthechapel.com and get some pretty cool t-shirts, posters, and make a donation.
Yeah, there's only a handful of times that you get the opportunity to see Night of the Living Dead on the big screen.
Oh, I know.
And Night of the Living Dead was made for drive-in screens. I mean, that's the way the whole thing was conceived. That's where we perceived it being shown, and it's a whole. I mean, the last in 2010, 2009, when we had the screening again in Echo Park in Evans City, and I sat. It was so brutally freezing, cold, damp. And I sat there with a guy from Steubenville who I had never met before. I'll probably never meet again.
Right.
And I saw Night of the Living Dead for the first time in many ways. It was so wonderful to just sit there and in that outdoor sound, and it just brought it right back. So anyway, I highly, highly recommend anyone who hasn't seen it on the big screen to do that, because it does become a whole new film.
Yeah, because I've probably seen it, and Drew, I don't know how many times you've seen it. I've probably seen it 500 times. And I'm only 31, and I have never seen it on the big screen. So,
you're going to love it.
Yeah.
You're just going to